So today I'm going to show you guys how to arm knit the basket weave stitch as well as complete a blanket using that stitch. The first thing you want to do is make a slip knot, and you're going to need a long tail because I do like to use the long tail cast on method for casting on your stitches when arm knitting. It just gives you a tighter, more secure edge. So for this blanket we're going to be casting on a total of 21 stitches, and for that we're going to need about 5 feet of tail. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The next thing you want to do is drape the yarn over your hand like that and pinch the two ends or the two sides together. Twist your hand away from you and grab that working yarn, which is the one that's attached to the skein of yarn, and that makes your slip knot. And you're going to place this loop on your right arm, and this counts as your first stitch. So now we're going to begin casting on our 21 stitches for the blanket, and it's going to go all the way up to your elbow. So if you're wearing long sleeves, go ahead and roll up your sleeves. And for casting on, you don't want to do it too tight because you are going to be moving the stitches all the way up. And what we're going to do is place both the working yarn, we have the tail and the working yarn. The tail should be closer to you. The working yarn should be further away from you, and the working yarn again is the one attached to the skein of yarn. So take both of those strands, the tail and the working yarn, and place them underneath your ring finger and your pinky. And then insert your index finger and your thumb. Okay. And then you're going to turn your hand so that the palm of your hand is facing you. And it should look like this. And to cast on that first stitch, you're going to take your index finger on your right hand, go under this strand, over this one, and pick up this one in the back. I'll show you how to do that. So take your index finger and you go under, over the one in the middle, and grab that one in the back and pull it up. And that's your new stitch. So you're going to go ahead and place that onto your right arm. Tighten up just a little bit. I'll show you how to do that a few more times, and we're going to cast on a total of 21. So again, place both the working yarn and the tail underneath your index and your ring finger and your pinky. And you're going to insert your index finger and your thumb in between those two strands. And then you're going to turn your palm of your hand towards you, so it's facing you. Take your index finger on your right hand and you're going to go under, over, and pick up this one to make a new stitch. So under, over, and grab the one in the back and pick it up to create this new stitch, and place that onto your right arm. So that's 3 stitches. Hold the yarn like I showed you in your left hand. Go under, over, and pick up the one in the back and place that onto your right arm. It's 4 again. Put those 2 strands under your ring finger and your pinky. Insert your thumb and your index finger. Turn the palm of your hand towards you. Now the tail should be wrapped around your thumb and the working yarn should be wrapped around your index finger. And that's kind of important because if it's the opposite way, you're going to be pulling the new stitches up from the tail and you'll run out of the tail too quickly. So let's go ahead and take our index finger, go under, over, and pick up the strand in the back to create a new stitch and place that onto your right arm. Okay, so 5 feet was just enough yarn. You're going to want to have about a ½ foot left of tail. That way when you're done with your blanket, after you bind off, you can go ahead and weave this into the end so that it doesn't come undone. So 5 feet of tail was perfect for 21 stitches. And the next step is to begin arm knitting. For the basket weave stitch, you're going to be using knits and purls. So you're going to be knitting and purling your stitches. And to start, we're going to knit 3 stitches. And I will show you how to do that. So you're no longer going to be using the tail of yarn, you're just going to be using the working yarn. So to knit your first stitch, you want to hold the working yarn in your right hand. Take this first stitch on your arm, pull it over and off of your hand while still holding onto the working yarn, and place that new stitch onto your left arm. So to tighten this first stitch can be a little bit tricky because you can pull on this and it just kind of loosens the tail and you'll run out of tail there. So you want to pull on the working yarn while pushing up on this knot. Okay, now with arm knitting, you want to try to keep your stitches as tight as you can on your arm while still being able to move them up and down. The tighter your stitch, the better your blanket will look. The holes won't be so large. So we knit our first stitch and we're going to knit another one. So hold the working yarn in your right hand. Take this next stitch and pull it over and off of your right hand while holding onto the working yarn. And this is your new stitch. You're just going to place that onto your left arm. Remember to tighten up. And again, hold the working yarn in your right hand. We're going to knit our third stitch. So pull the next one over and off of your right hand and pull up the working yarn. This creates a new stitch and you're just going to place that onto your left arm. So we did our 3 knit stitches. Now we want to purl 3 stitches. So to purl a stitch, we're going to pick up the skein of yarn, flip it over our work to the back and place it in our lap so that the working yarn is in the back of our work now. So we're going to purl 3 stitches by holding the working yarn in our right hand again. Take the next stitch, pull it over and off. We have a new stitch here and we're going to place that onto our right arm. Tighten up just a little bit. Remember to keep the working yarn in the back of your work. You don't want to pull it to the front and end up twisting your work. So keep it in the back. Hold it in your right hand and purl your next stitch. So pull it over and off of your hand, creating a new stitch and place that onto your left arm. Tighten up just a little bit and purl 1 more stitch. So hold it in your right hand, take the next one off of your right hand, pull it over and off, creating the new stitch with the working yarn and place that onto your left arm. So that was 3 purls. So now we want to knit 3 stitches. So go ahead and pick up your skein of yarn, flip it over your work to the front and place it in your lap. So now the working yarn is in the front of our work. So we're going to knit 3 stitches. So hold the working yarn in your right hand and again knit your stitch. And we're going to knit 3 because we're knitting 3 and purling 3, knitting 3 and then purling 3 all the way across the row until we come to the end. So that was 2 and knit 1 more, place it onto your left arm and tighten. Okay, so we knit 3, purl 3 and we knit 3 and now we want to purl 3. So we're going to pick up our skein of yarn, flip it over to the back so that the working yarn is in the back of our work, and we're going to purl 3 stitches just like I showed you on the other 3. So hold the working yarn in your right hand, pull that next stitch over and off of your right hand, place the new stitch onto your left hand and tighten. Do that 2 more times to purl 3 stitches. And now we're going to knit 3. So pick up your skein of yarn, flip it to the front and knit 3. 1, tighten. Now that we knit 3 stitches, we want to purl 3 stitches again. So pick up the skein of yarn and flip it to the back of your work and purl 3 stitches. And now we want to knit the last 3 stitches. So flip your skein of yarn to the front of your work. So that was our first row. We're going to repeat row 1 3 more times, and then we'll switch to purling our knits and knitting our purls, and I'll show you what that means in a second. So for row 2, we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to knit our knits and purl our purls. So the first thing you want to do is hold the working yarn in your left hand this time. Take that first stitch, pull it over and off. You have your new stitch, and place that onto your right arm this time. And we're knitting the first 3 stitches, so make sure the working yarn is in the front of your work. And knit the next one by holding the working yarn in your left hand. Take the next stitch and pull it over and off to create the new stitch, and place that onto your right arm. And remember to tighten. And knit one more. And tighten. Okay, and now we're going to purl 3. So you want to pick up what's left of your skein of yarn, flip it to the back and put it back in your lap. And we're going to purl 3. So the working yarn is in the back of our work. Hold the working yarn in your left hand, take the next stitch and pull it over and off your left hand while holding onto the working yarn, so you have this new stitch, and you're going to place that onto your right arm. Tighten it up and do that 2 more times to make 2 more purls. So we have our 3 purls, and now we want to knit 3. So we're going to pick up our skein of yarn, flip it to the front, so the working yarn is in the front of our work. And we're going to knit 3. So hold the working yarn in your left hand, knit 1, tighten, knit 2, tighten, and knit 3, and tighten. And I'm just pulling on this every now and then because it will get a little bit bunched up. Now this is going to look really bunched up on your arm, but this blanket will be about 3.5 feet wide. And that was our second row. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our third row with 3 knits and 3 purls. So we want to knit our first 3. So this time we're going to hold the working yarn in our right hand, just like we did with the first row. Two and 3. Now we're just about out of yarn from our first skein. So I'm going to grab a second skein and I'm going to show you how I attach the new skein of yarn. So we have the second skein here, and I'm just going to take an end from the new skein of yarn and I'm going to tie a double knot, and it's that simple. I'm just going to attach it to the old strand with a double knot, and I'm going to pull it really tight just to make sure it never comes undone. And then we're going to grab our scissors and trim these 2 pieces. Okay, so we have attached our new skein of yarn, and now we're going to keep knitting. So that was row 3, and now we're going to move on to row 4, which is the same as row 2. So we've completed our first 4 rows, and now what we're going to do in our 5th row is switch to purling 3 and then knitting 3. So we're going to be purling our knit stitches and knitting our purl stitches. So with these first 3, we're going to make sure we keep the working yarn in the back so that we purl them. So go ahead and knit the first stitch. It's going to be just the same as knitting, so just knit it. but then make sure when you place it onto your left arm, you're going to pick up that working yarn and pull it to the back and tighten it up. So the working yarn is in the back of your work, so it turns it into a purl stitch. And we're gonna purl 2 more. So the working yarn is in the back of your work, and you're purling 3 stitches. So there's 3 stitches, and now we're gonna pick up our skein of yarn, flip it to the front, and knit the next 3 stitches. So we have the working yarn in the front of our work. Hold it in your right hand and knit 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to purl the next 3 stitches. And now we're going to knit 3. When we started with the first 4 rows, we knitted the first 3 stitches, and then we purled the next 3 stitches, and so on across the row. With the 5th row, we ended up purling the first 3 stitches and knitting the next 3 stitches. So we kind of switched it up a little bit, and that's going to create the look of the basket weave. But for the 6th row, we're going to repeat the 5th row. So we're going to be purling 3 and knitting 3. So when you purl the first 3, you're going to hold the working yarn in your left hand, pull that stitch over and off, creating this new stitch, and place it onto your right arm. And then make sure you pick up the working yarn and pull it to the back of your work to create a purl. And then purl 2 more with the working yarn in the back of your work. So this is row 6. We're going to knit 3. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to purl 3. Alright, so we're just about out of yarn here, so we're going to add on our 3rd skein of yarn. So we need to repeat row 5 2 more times. So we're on row 7 now, and we're going to purl 3 and knit 3 across the entire row. So as you can see, we are working our rows in multiples of 4. So we're knitting 3 and purling 3 across as we knit, but as the rows go on, we're doing 4 rows of knit 3, purl 3, and then 4 rows of purl 3, knit 3. So now that we've done our 4 rows of purl 3, knit 3, we're going to switch back to knitting 3 and purling 3. So go ahead and knit 3 stitches. So now we're going to move on to row 13, and we're going to switch back to purling 3 and then knitting 3. So we're going to be purling our knits and knitting our purls for this row. Move on to row 17, and we're going to switch back to knitting 3 and then purling 3. row 20, and now we're going to switch up our stitches to purling 3 and then knitting 3 with row 21. So we are moving on to row 25, and we're going to switch to knitting 3 and then purling 3, and we're going to repeat that for 4 rows. So we're going to do rows 25 through 29. Okay, so we just finished row 28. We're going to move on to row 29, and now we're going to purl the first 3 and knit the next 3 and do that across the entire row. So purl 3. But now I'm going to go on to row 33, and we're going to do 4 rows with knitting 3 and then purling 3. So I just finished row 36, and now I'm going to show you how to end your blanket. So to end your blanket, you want to bind off. So to bind off, we're going to knit 2 stitches. And we're going to bind off loosely, so don't tighten them too much. So we've knit our 2 stitches, and now you want to take the first one, pull it over the second one and off of your hand. You're going to knit another stitch, take the first one, pull it over the second one and off of your hand. Knit another stitch, take the first one, pull it over the second one and off of your hand. And you're just going to continue doing this until you have 1 stitch left on your arm. So you knit 1, bind 1 off, knit 1, bind 1 off, knit 1, bind 1 off, all the way across the row. And when you get to the last stitch here, we are going to cut the working yarn from the skein about 1 foot away from your hand. Pull that all the way through the last loop and pull it tight until it stops sliding to create a knot. So there you have the end of your blanket. The next thing you want to do is weave in both the cast on tail and the bind off tail. So we're going to take this tail, wrap it through just a couple of these end stitches. I'm just pulling it, just kind of wrapping it around. Just a few inches or a few stitches in. And then we're going to move down a little bit. So we're going to go pull it under this stitch. And then we'll pull it under this one, but we're only going to pull it through halfway to create this loop here. Then we're going to grab the tail, pull it through halfway again to create another loop. And then we're going to grab the tail and pull it all the way through and push up on that knot until it doesn't slide anymore. Then you can go ahead and cut the excess and do the same thing to the other tail, the cast on tail. And that's it, your blanket is complete. You can head to my blog at simplymaggie.com. I'll have the pictures there of the finished product, the written pattern, as well as everything that you're going to need to complete this blanket. And you can purchase this yarn at premieryarns.com.